Welcome back to the Investigator discussion series. I'm rather Incoherent, and this is Father Mateo. He's been guest starring in a lot of videos since his Parallel came out, and I haven't gotten to playtest it, but I finally got to play some Arkham, I finally got to playtest it, and first we need to cover the original Father Mateo before we move on. As always, I view Parallel Investigators as deck building options for the original, so I'll be discussing what I think is the best combination of vanilla and Parallel Mateo pieces. Let's start with Mateo's stat line. 4 in head and 3 in foot. You always want to be a 5-head mystic, but 4-head mystics are totally workable. It just requires a little bit extra effort to hit the same levels of reliability. And 3 in foot is good. I mean, it's not 2 or 1, which a lot of mystics have. You're not really expecting to see a 4 in foot as mystic. So while you're not a 5-head mystic, you're about as good as you could otherwise expect to be. Your stat line's really evenly spread and not super efficient with a 3 in book and a 2 in fist. 2 in fist being the more important one, the one that would allow you to use things like Dragon Pull or Cyclopean Hammer very effectively. Mateo's got a base 6 for Cyclopean Hammer, a base 2 for Dragon Pull, not really looking super viable there. So while it's not a terrible 4-head mystic stat line, it is pretty much it's just about as bad as a mystic stat line could be before I call it bad. It can't really be made worse in any way without becoming a serious problem. The original Father Mateo's ability was reaction after Investigator reveals a Chaos token, anywhere, not necessarily your location. Cancel that token and treat it as an Elder Sign token instead, limit once per game. Now this is a really strong effect. It has the value of whatever that failure was as a swing effect. So instead of doing nothing with an action, you gain 3 clues and draw a deduction. For instance, when you use this on Practice Makes Perfect, deduction level 2. When you have somebody who's running the old school Foot Matters characters, where they're trying to recur a Pilfer level 3 and they auto-fail it, probably with a manual dex committee because we're probably talking about an older Winnie deck, then you can use this to make them get the value of their skills, get the 3 clues, and recur that Pilfer. There are certain huge skill tests that are going to matter in every team, and old Father Mateo was better in the teams with more important skill tests, with skills committed to them that recurred things. This is not a bad effect by any stretch of the imagination. The issue is that it's once per game, and pretty much every recursive effect of any value will add up turn over turn to be more impactful than this was. His star effect is very, very good as well, one of the best, if not the best, in the entire game. You automatically succeed after this test ends, choose 1, draw 1 card, and gain 1 resource, or if it was during your turn, you may just take an additional action instead. Just absolutely ridiculous, guaranteed value, obviously incredible, nothing bad to say about it. 6/8 split of soak is great, it's kind of what you're hoping to see on mystics, because after research, that'll bring you down to 6/6 soak, perfectly balanced, above 5 on both fronts, good soak split. So the major issue with the front of his card is really just that this reaction is not going to have the same value as any sort of recursive ability. And then coming down to his deck building is deck size 30, mystic 0 to 5, blessed 0 to 3, and a neutral 0 to 5. He also has a bonus experience to go with his very restrictive deck building of 5 more experience. Now the major issue when Mateo got released, because he came out before the blessed archetype, before blessed tokens were a thing, is that blessed 0 to 3 kinda just sucked. Now with the release of Innsmouth, the blessed archetypes opened up and Father Mateo got a lot more interesting. However, generally speaking, there weren't that many great payoff methods for bless at the time. Far and away the best one was using Favor This on Ancient Covenant to get additional value by guaranteed successes over the course of a scenario. And that's actually at its best in Mystic, where you can take a guaranteed success on, say, first action Rite of Seeking for 3 clues. It's way better when your actions are individually worth more output, like Mystic assets are. The rest of the payoff cards weren't necessarily that powerful, and at this point in time, Innsmouth really didn't give you enough ways to generate blesses for Mateo to be uniquely good at it in any way. It was still mostly just like Sister Mary's job to put blesses in the bag. And then down the line, Hemlock Veil comes out, and at this point, Father Mateo fits into so many more teams because somebody can run Ancestral Token, which is almost Sister Mary on a stick. So now he fits into more teams, there are more payoff cards. They're still like not really that incredible. The bless cards are better insofar as they're more easy to run. The payoff is less costly to put into your deck because there's so little reason not to run bless when it's so easy to fill the bag with them. But the best thing still was just using Ancient Covenant to pass with Mystic assets. So that's where I stand with the original Father Mateo. I'm going to briefly show off his signatures, which I've never been particularly fond of. He has a 2-cost hand asset, commits for a head and a question mark, and you might want to commit it because it is going to seal the Elder Sign when you play it. While it's in play, you get +1 head if there is a token sealed here. And like, you know, that would be nice. On average, that makes you better, if slightly more likely to auto-fail. But it hurts your whole team. The more players in your team, the worse it is. And even with one other player, and with the best star in the game, you don't really want to do this. So this is actually an event with a lot of extra steps, because its ability is reaction. When you would reveal a chaos token from the chaos bag, discard the Codex of Ages, resolve the star sealed here as if it were revealed in the chaos bag. So essentially, you spend this card and one resource to just auto-succeed a test if you're taking the one resource, one card effect, or you spend two resources and a play action and a card so that your next action is a guaranteed success that refunds the action cost, right? This is an event with extra steps. It is not really an asset you want to keep in play unless you are playing true solo, and even then it increases your chance of auto-failing, so you're probably still playing it as a pseudo event. The Serpents of Yig are relatively annoying, being a 3 health weakness enemy. They only have 2 fists, 2 foot, so it's not too hard to deal with them. They're Prey, Mateo only. Hunter, they're going to spawn engaged with you, obviously, so Hunter is unlikely to come up too much, but it can. And it has Revelation, Seal the Elder Sign on Serpents of Yig, which, you know, needs to be dealt with just in general. I've never seen this guy be too much of a problem, especially with access to Spectral Razor in class for Mateo. So just like his signature doesn't really make him notably better in my opinion, because, like, it's just the hand slot's a slight issue, the cost of the card's a slight issue. It's one guaranteed success and a character whose whole strength is that you can take guaranteed successes with Favor of the Sun, so it's redundant with his best cards that came out later. So I don't really value Codex of Ages very much, but I also don't really fear Serpent of Yig too much. And to show off how I would build a Father Mateo, this is the outrageously expensive 72 experience Father Mateo deck that I took through Dark Matter years ago before Hemlock Vale. And I'm very strongly of the opinion, after like all the theory crafting, because I spent like hours and hours trying to find cute ways to do stuff like Steel of Isis, and I just could not find a way where it didn't feel like I was getting my top end slightly higher at a massive cost on my floor. I felt like the most consistent, powerful things available to Father Mateo were using Ancient Covenant in conjunction with Favor of the Sun, and using Jacob Morrison as Lucky on a stick, so that I would basically be able to pass any scenario test and any mythos test. And what I realized playing this character is that Favor of the Sun, Ancient Covenant, is actually incredibly strong with Mateo's stat line. Coming back over here, if you look at the stat line when you use Favor of the Sun on a skill test, your stat line, since you're not pulling any additional tokens with Ancient Covenant, is a 6-5-4-5. That basically breaks every mythos test and every skill test in the game. There are very, very few things that you cannot auto-succeed on with Ancient Covenant, Favor of the Sun on Father Mateo. So as I played this deck through Dark Matter, more and more became of the opinion, holy shit, I can do anything. About 6 times. So Jacob Morrison was actually fairly important to the deck, because I really didn't want to be using Favor of the Sun on mythos tests. I wanted to just like have decent odds and then pass with Jacob if I failed. And then I liked having Olive so that I wouldn't be required to use Favor of the Sun on like a 3-shroud location. I would have ways to just be like, okay, I'm good enough. I don't need to be worried about auto fail. I'll probably pass with Olive. That's where I was at when I originally made this deck. And if I were going to make a Father Mateo deck these days with what I've learned from the previous one, I would basically just playing a stripped down version of that deck. Very, very little would change. My opinion on Father Mateo with all the new stuff from Hemlock is the people putting blessed tokens in the bag for me will do a better job of it. You'll notice these Father Mateo decks really don't include shit for generating blesses. They've got a Holy Rosary level 2, and they have a Tempt Fate, and that's kind of it. And you might look at this and be like, that's not really a blessed deck, what's going on? And I think this is because I might approach blesses meaningfully differently from a lot of people. I view blesses as something the team decides to do together, and very importantly, I think most decks do not have room to both generate blesses and capitalize on blesses simultaneously. There are only so many card slots in a deck. You need to draw your cards, you need to pay for your cards, you need your cards that do your job, you need the cards that are going to keep you safe to the mythos phase. And then when you try to cram in the cards that generate blesses and the cards that use blesses on top of that, you end up having to make really painful cuts. I find it's best when the team has one person put in the way to generate the blesses and another person put in the way to use them. In this case, the way to use blesses was enabling Favor of the Sun and Ancient Covenant, as well as Jacob Morrison on Father Mateo, and that was actually just more than enough for me to be very, very happy with the blessed tokens. I played this sort of deck at a point in time where my tier list worked very differently, but it was enough power for me to get Father Mateo out of my lowest tier just playing this sort of deck. And again, it's entirely on the back of Favor of the Sun. Just being able to pass 6 tests a game, guaranteed no token pool, was very, very powerful. it was enough for me to say he was clearly better than everyone I had in my bottom tier. But we're not talking about that deck today, because that deck's not the one I've been slowly moving into S tier with every single video. We're talking about Parallel Father Mateo. We can cover the back of the card first, because it's not going to be changing anything. He gets Mystic cards 0 to 3. As I was saying in the old Father Mateo video, the best thing he's favored the sun on really is Rite of Seeking level 4, Clairvoyance level 5, that sort of stuff. Losing access to that really hurts. He gets Blessed cards level 0 to 5, which is a lot more access, but I don't particularly value that access that highly. There's some good stuff there, but in my opinion, nothing that makes up for what you're losing as your Favor the Sun targets. Neutral 0 to 5, and 5 other cards with Seal 0 to 5. And again, interesting card access, not bad, but just compared to losing the high-end Mystic assets that are like the point of the deck, Favor the Sun into those assets was the thing he was doing that was so powerful. I really don't know that I'd ever want to play with this, and the nail in the coffin that's easy to overlook, there's no additional deck building rules anymore. You don't start off with 5 bonus experience, and I'm the kind of person who is an absolute fiend for Scenario 1 power levels. So combined with massively reducing the top end value of what Favor the Sun can do, and losing power in Scenario 1, I just really don't feel enticed at all by the back of Father Mateo. The front of Parallel Father Mateo though, oh boy howdy are we talking. The soak and stats remain the same. His ability, however, is notably more complicated, and in terms of recursive value, you really can't do any better. Let's read both parts and then explain what it does. Lightning Bolt, during your turn, seal a Blessed token on an Investigator at your location with no Blessed token sealed on them, limit once per round. So once per round, you're going to be putting Blessed tokens on somebody at your location. Why is that valuable? Reaction, when an Investigator would reveal a Chaos token, resolve the Blessed token sealed on them instead, release that token. So once per round, you can put a Blessed token on somebody, and then you can do as many as you want, as many as are in play. You can resolve Blessed tokens from character cards. They no longer need to be at your location instead of the token pulled from the bag. That's actually kind of wild, and there's something here that I didn't catch initially that makes it even better than it sounds. This says release that token, not resolve that token as if it were in the bag. Coming over to Favor the Sun, which that ability is very analogous to, with its wording, you resolve a Chaos token sealed here instead as if it were just revealed from the Chaos bag. There are a couple of card synergies where Favor the Sun will be notably better because you're revealing it from the Chaos bag. But because you're revealing it from the Chaos bag with Favor the Sun, you remove the token after the skill test. The way this is phrased is release all sealed tokens here after this test ends. Release this token. That's unrelenting. You don't spend the Blessed token on Parallel Father Mateo. I was putting him in my S tier before I even realized this. It is absolutely silly that the main way Father Mateo spends Blessed tokens does not spend them. Now, with the original Mateo, I basically said he gets out of bottom tier because at some point, 6 times a scenario, sort of unpredictably when you have to draw him in a relatively low draw deck, you're going to pass 6 skill tests. Parallel Father Mateo says, I'm going to pass a skill test to turn, period, end of story. Might not happen on turn 1 if you're not playing with a Sister Mary. Parallel Father Mateo and Kohaku are characters where you really won't like everyone on your team running Tempt Fate because they just give so much value when Tempt Fate's getting played, and Tempt Fate's a relatively low opportunity cost of whatever deck it goes in. So I would say even without a Sister Mary, odds are pretty good Father Mateo's guaranteed passing a test to turn from turn 1, and you can actually get into a little bit of a debt with this. You can only seal 1 Blessed token a turn, but you can spend unlimited. So you can, on turn 1, not spend your Blessed token, you just don't have a way to do it. Then on turn 2, you spend your Blessed token, you seal a new one. Eventually you have a turn where you spend 2 Blessed tokens, you get back on track. It's really not hard for Father Mateo to turn this ability into I succeed 1 test a turn with Ancient Covenant. Now, it is worth noting this has value for teammates. You can seal them on other people if those people have Ancient Covenant. It's absolutely wild because again, they don't even need to stay near you after you seal it. They can just carry that around until they need it. This ability is very analogous to a Jacqueline's ability. It feels a lot like guaranteeing the result of token fishing with Jacqueline. The major difference with Father Mateo and a Jacqueline is that while Jacqueline will find her signature and start helping people with her ability, Father Mateo really never feels like he has time. He's got something very valuable every turn because of all those Mystic clue finding assets. So it's very consistently been the case in the 3 scenarios I've seen so far of Hemlock Vale that Father Mateo is just not really playing team support with this ability. It's not that you can't, it's that when you look at team support on Parallel Mateo, it's that it does have a pretty severe opportunity cost, and If your team's built for it, it's probably about on par with what you'll get yourself. So the point is not that parallel support Mateo is bad, but that it comes at a pretty severe opportunity cost and comes out to be about the same. I will mention though, his star is pretty good at support. Resolve Father Mateo's lightning bolt ability ignoring its limit. That means that when you get your star, if you already had one on you, or if you're about to put one on you, you're playing the normal game plan, you're probably not gonna have another use this turn, you can just give it to somebody else at your location. So that star does tend to mean that the otherwise greedy play pattern for Mateo is gonna be able to support, or vice versa. So that's very, very good. And since the parallels come out with improved signatures, we need to talk about them. And I'm actually just gonna skip over Codex of Ages and go straight to Serpents of Yig. Serpents of Yig has 3/3 stats now, it has 4 health now, it's no longer solved cleanly by Spectral Razor. It's still Prey Mateo only Hunter, but now it searches every play area for Blessed tokens and seals all of them on Serpents of Yig. The fact this is no longer dealt with cleanly by Spectral Razor, that your fighter, if he's dealing with it, has a tremendously harder time dealing with it, and that it's going to briefly ruin any interactions you have with Blessed tokens for a little bit in what is very likely a Blessed team. To me, this new Codex of Ages has to be absolutely crazy, and it kind of isn't. It lets you use its ability as 3 Blessed tokens and you don't seal the star anymore. It's notably better. It's 3 guaranteed successes up from 1 with Ancient Covenant, but you are already using Ancient Covenant every turn. It's really not worth the problem that is the new Serpents of Yig, at least in my opinion. Which brings us to the half parallel Mateo I would play. Parallel front, vanilla back. You'll notice it does look strikingly similar to the decks I was playing for original Mateo. That makes sense, it's the same deck building rules, just a different implementation of them. We're able to cut our Favor of the Sun, we simply don't need it anymore. We're already using Ancient Covenant every turn, the additional Bless is sealed is really minor value. Crystal Pendulum is a card that is a tremendous standout in parallel Father Mateo. I am going to be taking 1 test a turn, ideally, where I am testing at +2. I know this, I'm going to pull a Blessed token and tap Ancient Covenant. If I know my final number, this is just +1 head, draw a card every turn. It's absolutely insane. Jacob Morrison is just as valuable as ever for making it much, much easier to not use your ability during the Mythos phase. I will have an honorable mention here to Olive McBride. She makes it easier to use your stuff, just trigger your arcane assets without hitting your backfires, recur your Spectral Razors, do all of this without using Ancient Covenant. I personally don't see a need for Charisma in this deck. I don't think Olive meaningfully improves your deck that much. I think I value Jacob for Mythos phase without using Ancient Covenant more than I value Olive, and it's entirely possible that Charisma could be the way to go here. Jewel of Aureolus is also obviously very good in this deck since you know you're going to be pulling a symbol. However, essentially you're upgrading Crystal Pendulum into this. And for most characters, Crystal Pendulum is gambling. Even for Jacqueline Fine, Crystal Pendulum is gambling. For Father Mateo, you're not actually getting any more activations of draw. This costs 1 more resource, 4 experiences of down the rabbit hole, and what you're getting is that now you can choose to gain 2 resources instead of draw. If you're building a very resource-hungry deck, you might want to go for Jewel of Aureolus first. I personally don't ever want to do that, because then if I miss the Jewel, I know I won't be paying for my deck. This is mostly valuable if you're in a team where later in the campaign, you're consistently recurring Spectral Razor, and it's costing you a lot of money. In that circumstance, where it's not your whole deck is expensive, just that there is 1 recursive expensive cost, maybe you want to go into Jewel. Oh, and I didn't really cover it, we are looking at a clue, we're looking at Clairvoyance, Divination, Rite of Seeking, just to have a big pile of crazy things to use with Ancient Covenant, and then we're running Spectral Razor. This lets us deal with our own weakness, lets us really meaningfully help with fighting throughout the course of a scenario, a lot more than you would normally expect an almost pure Cleaver deck to do, and I'm very happy with that balance. You can make parallel Father Mateo into the most consistent fighter in the game. The main reason I don't want to do that with Father Mateo is because if I did do that, I have to make room in the deck for an Ancestral token when I have the best Crystal Pendulum in the entire game by far. No longer is somebody else using Ancestral token for me, that burden is entirely on my own deck, which can make it a little bit more awkward to keep Blesses sealed at the start of a scenario. And as far as flexing goes, honestly, I'm just happy running Crystal Pendulum, Scroll of Secrets, and flexing a little bit less with Spectral Razor. I don't really feel any desire to push the deck further into flex than this, because I feel like you get a little bit of top end fighting, but you're not even that much better at fighting. Like, yes, you will be better, but the amount of clue finding power you'll lose by having like one of these 3 assets in play and not being able to just crack any location is notable. I just think Spectral Razor guaranteed recursion is more than enough to be a clover that contributes a shitload on fighting. And again, remember, we have Ancient Covenant with 3 foot and guaranteed bless per turn. We can just trip anything as well. There are very few, if any, 6 foot enemies in the game. So this is also able to just trip anyone if you need to do that. I didn't cover the original Father Mateo deck in too much detail, and there's really not too much to talk about. Aside from the unique bless stuff, we're just running the Clover package, we're running an unusually easy to recur Spectral Razor, we're running Voice of Ra because we expect to be in a bless team alongside Keep Faith, which is just free 4 bless tokens in the bag, and Tempt Fate, which is even freer because it's going to redraw itself. It's actually a cantrip, it's not just a card that costs nothing, but it will add 3 curses to the bag as well. I will say that I've not been the pilot for Father Mateo in this campaign we're running. I've been piloting Flex Kohaku next to him, and our Tempt Fates have been absolutely disgusting, where Tempt Fate gets 1 token sealed onto Father Mateo, and then all but 1 curse token gets eaten by the Kohaku. It's a really cool synergy. Just have your entire team easily justify being able to run Tempt Fate, and then there's tremendous value immediately to those tokens. But even if you weren't playing alongside a Kohaku, you would really want Tempt Fate and Parallel Mateo, same with Keep Faith, just to guarantee the bag stays filled. I will say that of the 2, Keep Faith is infinitely more cuttable, costing experience, the 0 experience version costing resources, and not drawing the card. If you have a fighter, like let's say you have a Bless Mark as your fighter, this guy is going to draw Ancestral Token in the first couple of turns, he's a Mark here again, you really don't feel like you need, with the enemy density in your campaign, to ever play a Keep Faith. In that case, absolutely, consider cutting this. Maybe you can justify running Charisma and Olive in circumstances like those. The big issue I have with running Charisma is just what the hell do I cut for it is very hard, and I will note that Voice of Ra is tremendously better with an Olive. It's the main reason I want to try to find a way to fit her into the deck, but I can't really justify it over Jacob, and when I'm talking about deck cores, while 54 is not expensive for a Mystic, at the end of a campaign, I would probably have found the cut for an Olive, but in scenario 4, when I've only gotten half of my free entire campaign of experience, this is closer to what a deck core would be. Coming down to a starter deck, it's a down the rabbit hole deck with 5 starting experience, so the only real change here is that we switch over to Jacob Morrison's at some points. You're pretty much locked into starting Ancient Covenant, which gives you 3 more experience to spend. I don't really see a reason to do anything other than get 2 divinations and bank 1. You absolutely could drop down to 5/5 and in the thick of it. I personally dislike playing characters with 5/5 soak if I'm not running a shitload of soak assets or healing. Since Crystal Pendulum does not soak and it's just going to be a 1 ally asset, I don't really want to take in the thick of it. I'm happy banking 1 and taking divination. In terms of the specific upgrade path, what do you get first? If you're on a team that really needs you to flex fight a lot, Spectral Razor's a pretty high priority. If you're on a team where you're predominantly the main clover, which is how our Father Mateo is, where Kohaku largely doesn't need to flex find clues at all, and then we have a main fighter, Sister Mary, then you're going to want to go straight for these arcane assets and do better because the pressure placed on you is entirely find all the clues. If you get more clues, the team will do great. So those are the 2 routes that are generally going to happen. You either take Spectral Razor immediately or you go into this immediately. So let's talk about those 2 paths separately. On the clue build, you're probably looking for Jacob Morrison before any of the stuff on the right side. If you really don't feel like you need to upgrade Spectral Razor, then Mythos Resilience from Jacob is probably the best thing you're adding, and the rest of this can come in any order that you want. As always, if your team is weak to Mythos, you go Ward of Protection, and in this day and age, Ward of Protection just has so much opportunity cost that I don't really give a single shit if you upgrade it day 1 or day 6. It's gonna be the same to me. I no longer particularly value getting this early, though it obviously is good to get at some point. If you're going Spectral Razor first, that does imply that your team has stronger clue finding abilities, and since you're going to guarantee pass 1 skill test per turn with Ancient Covenant, it might be less important to get the bonuses from the halfway point on these upgrades at Clairvoyance and Rite of Seeking. So you might actually find that if you're going for Spectral Razor first, that maybe you want to go for E-Cash and Jacob Morrison even before your clue finding stuff, because E-Cash becomes a cantrip, helps you find the Spectral Razor. Jacob Morrison makes it much less likely you need to spend your Ancient Covenant during the Mythos phase, leaving you free to recur the Spectral Razor, and then you go into clue finding. Of the upgrades in the deck, by far the least important ones are Keep Faith and Guts. Guts is obviously very good. The upgrade for Guts is largely the same upgrade as the one for E-Cash, with the minor difference that the upgrade for Guts can fail to draw the additional card. The upgrade for Keep Faith is just +2 resources, but you can easily hold it in your hand until you need it, and in many circumstances, you're not going to be required to play Keep Faith early, and it still commits for a Guts if you need it for that. Coming over to the tier list, I want to address a couple of things that have changed between videos before we move to Father Mateo. Jenny has once again jumped over the border between C and D as I go back and forth nonstop on whether or not she's good enough late game to justify getting out of D. I have Ursula and Monterey at the same order, but at the bottom of my A tier instead of the top of my B tier, and I've kicked Parallel Skids down to high B tier. I think he is just so notably less mythos resilient than everyone else in A tier, and a common phrase that I've used when discussing A tier characters in terms of how they feel is I'm not ever stressed about blank when they're on the team. Ursula's gonna get clues. I'm not worried about Monterey. He's gonna be fine. He's gonna do his own thing, kill some enemies, trip some guys, get some clues. Dexter Drake crushes a roll. Ashcan Pete makes enemies a non-issue. Norman Withers is incredibly powerful as a flex, so you get the idea. I don't feel the same way when someone brings the Parallel Skids, and maybe that's an inherent part of being a rogue fighter, right? That you put pressure on your team that is not stress-free in exchange for power in a different form. But honestly, I kind of feel like on a generous day, I might say that's just a team comp thing you need to plan around. But these days I'm feeling like, yeah, I don't think A tier characters are team comp things you need to plan around. When my teammate is putting blesses in the bag, I'll put Parallel Mateo in the team as one thing, but I specifically need very strong flex fighters to play alongside my rogue fighter feels like a notably more specific criteria, and it puts a lot more stress on your team, where they are playing and building in very specific ways beyond just I'll run Ancestral Token as the fighter, or I'll run Tempt Fate even though I otherwise might not. Essentially, the more I think about Parallel Skids and the dirty fighting rogue fighter archetype, the more I think the argument that your team can make up for your weaknesses in exchange for power later is cope because I like Parallel Skids a lot. I don't think he deserves to be an A tier. I want him to be. He's S tier in my heart, but in reality, I think he's probably very high in B tier and doesn't quite deserve where I've been putting him. Kohaku's also shot the tier list more. We'll talk about him in his own video sometime soon, probably not tomorrow because I've been talking about a lot of Mystics lately. But today we're talking about Parallel Father Mateo, who's my current 7th place. He's very high on the tier list. I think I've already pretty much covered the strength of Father Mateo. You get to use Ancient Covenant Favor the Sun every turn of the campaign from turn 1, scenario 1, as long as there are blesses in the bag. And since you're not burning the bless you're using every turn, it's pretty easy to keep enough blesses in the bag. In a post-Hemlock Vale world where your fighter can run Ancestral Token, I feel like it's just not a big ask to say like, Father Mateo, yeah, he's the only S tier character that's getting played specifically in bless teams. I don't know that on his own, if no one else cared, and like all they did was run Tempt Fate for you, I don't know that that would be enough. It might be. He honestly does not use very many blesses. He just needs to make sure the bag doesn't bottom out. But I'm completely fine with the criteria being that Father Mateo needs to get played on a bless team. I don't view that as a problem for Father Mateo. I think bless teams are relatively easy to make now because you can make any half guardian fighter into a bless fighter. I'm really struggling to find anything else to say about Father Mateo because like, yeah, it's just that. He uses Crystal Pendulum to draw extra cards, but it's basically just that. There's nothing else to say about Parallel Father Mateo. I've been racking my brain trying to come up with it, and there isn't. He draws more than a normal Mystic because of Crystal Pendulum. He's more Mythos resilient because of Jacob Morrison. There's cool stuff going on, but the vast majority of his strength is guaranteed success with Favor the Sun, Ancient Covenant, every turn, all campaign. It's not complicated. There's not a lot to say about it. It's just a question of how strong is that really? And frankly, I think I've seen this Clover perform in the early scenarios at a level comparable to or greater than a Rex or a Daisy. He is incredibly effective at his role. He just absolutely crushes 3-man clooving without any real challenge, without any risk whatsoever. He's more Mythos Resilience than a Daisy or Rex unless they're specifically built for Mythos Resilience, in which case they're basically on par. I think the fact he has no real experience startup time, no real weakness during the first scenario of a game that like a Tony Morgan might. Tony Morgan might be losing that weakness by not needing Knuckle Dusters in the near future, but the point is that Father Mateo to me feels like he's just better than these characters right beneath him. Not by a lot, there's not a lot better that you can be than Tony, Rex, and Daisy, but he does feel better to me than those characters. The people he's beneath, all of them except Harvey and Amanda, are characters with really powerful team support. Mark Harrigan bestow resolve decks help their team in a way that Father Mateo can't do it without hurting himself a lot. I think I'm too kind to Jacqueline. The way these characters compare is essentially that Jacqueline is better once she has Arbiter of Fates. At some point during every scenario, Jacqueline's going to find Arbiter of Fates and start being better than Father Mateo was. More easily able to pass Mythos tests than even Jacob Morrison, more able to help her team. She is going to start outperforming Father Mateo whenever she draws Arbiter of Fates. However, that means that for a substantial chunk of the scenario, remember Father Mateo has better draw than Jacqueline as well, Jacqueline is going to not outperform Father Mateo. These characters are like neck and neck. They are very minorly different. I'm gonna put Father Mateo on top, if only barely. I think he's meaningfully more consistent, he's proactively more powerful thanks to Bless Energies and Crystal Pendulum, and then eventually Jacqueline draws Arbiter Fates and becomes more powerful in a general sense, but most notably because of team support. It's very close, flip a coin, that's kind of how I feel about it. I do think Mark Harrigan absolutely demolishes the role as fighter or flex, and the Bestow Resolve team support puts him above Father Mateo, because they're both demolishing their role with insane levels of consistency, but Father Mateo does not really have the team support that a Mark does. Daryl and Gloria, if the argument is team support while crushing your role, they're just better than Mark, and that was already better than Mateo. Amanda snaps the game in half. Harvey's the real question where when I look at Harvey, I'm like, should I adjust the way I'm evaluating Harvey if team support is so important to getting this high in the tier list? Because essentially Harvey is a flex character that runs 2 fighting cards, and those 2 fighting cards make him a better fighter than most fighters. He just needs someone to give him a moment to breathe at the start of a scenario to find them, those 2 cards being Occult Lexicon level 3 and Ravenous Myconid, both uniquely well enabled by Harvey's deck, because just having that much draw makes it easier to find them and use them as flex cards, as well as to fuel them in the case of Occult Lexicon. Harvey's not really a team support deck at all, but he's running testless methods of fighting as a flex fighter that absolutely steamroll pretty much any possible obstacle he can encounter, while otherwise calling himself flex but playing a 5-book Clover and Seeker. So yeah, it's hard for me to argue he doesn't get to be this high even though he has no team support. And then the real question with Parallel Father Mateo going above these people is, how important is raising the floor really? Because while his ceiling is a lot lower than the people above him, he probably has the highest floor of any character in the game. 1 guaranteed success a turn's a lot. You can beat a scenario with nothing but auto fails in the bag with 1 guaranteed success a turn. And while the floor is tremendously important to me, it's no small part of why some characters rank so lowly and no small part of why Father Mateo gets this high. I don't think it matters enough to push him above the crazy outputs of the people above him. He's already above people with pretty ridiculous output in Daisy, Rex, and Tony. I don't think he has enough going on for me to push him above Mark and Harvey. I meant to talk about Beloved at some point during the video as an example case card. Beloved is a usually unplayable skill card, commits for head, foot, question mark. It is an innate bless card, so Father Mateo gets it. If a bless token is revealed during this test, you may remove Beloved from the game to replace that token's effect with the following. You automatically succeed. Do not reveal another token, return this token to the chaos bag after the test ends. This is essentially a one-off skill version of Ancient Covenant. And it's also uniquely good in Father Mateo because you can seal a bless token on any teammate and then give them Beloved, forcing them to auto-succeed a test. That's very valuable. I personally don't think Beloved makes the cut. If you're playing a more support Parallel Mateo, then it probably will. But what I want to mention with Beloved as the poster child for this is very nearly every bless card is better in Parallel Mateo. I'm not going to take the entire video talking about all of them, but yes, Beloved has a sick interaction with Parallel Mateo and most bless cards. Like if you want to do anything cute with bless at all, it's probably better in Father Mateo than anyone else. Anyway, let's wrap this up. I've been Rather Incoherent. Thank you for your time. If you made it this far, then please do press all the buttons to make the algorithm happy. And I cannot overstate my gratitude towards the people supporting this channel, both as channel members here on YouTube and as patrons over on Patreon. I'll see all of you in the next one.